Today I want to show you another place on the island of Chengchao.
And she's going to tell you about a festival they have there too. Thank you for joining us today on Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. Alyssa is going to take us back around the world to Hong Kong to tell us some more.
So we're going to go back to that little fishing village that we were talking about last time, the little island of Chengchao, and we're going to look at a temple today, which is cool because it's very different from things we see here in the US, but at the same time, it's sad because it's a place where people go to worship basically like an idol, something that represents a god or a being that they think is going to help them in this life or give them something else in another life. So while it's really cool to look at and it's very unique, it's also sad at the same time because it reminds us that these people need Jesus. They need to know who the real reason is for life and how they can have a forever home in heaven someday. So we're going to look at this temple today. So back to the island of Chengchao. We talked about that last time about the little fishing village. So on the island, they have this really cool temple that was built back in the 1700s, and I was reading about it too, and it was talking about it has some sort of special significance because it's like in this shape, or it's near this path of the dragon or something like that. So you can see there are like little dragons on the top of it, which is cool, and I'm sure everything has like lots of significance that I don't understand. But the temple itself is pretty unique, and it's very colorful and rather ornately decorated. Like these little guys carved into stone, like they're really detailed. That's pretty impressive for this kind of building and everything. So I thought that was really cool, and I really loved these murals that they had on the wall with these colors, and they were like 3D, so they were like coming out from the wall.
So is that like stone that they then painted?
I couldn't tell if it was stone or if it was like pieces of metal almost.
Oh, okay.
Because some of them were like curved and shaped out.
Yeah.
But it was really unique and super beautiful, very colorful. The day we were there was like really cloudy, so I feel like the colors looked even more amazing that way. Or maybe they're more like mosaics? I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Whatever they were very cool. And we backed up and took a picture with them too, so that you can kind of see the color contrast, especially with like everything else that's like gray and the color of the city. It just is pretty unique.
Oh.
So I was reading too, and this island is really well known for its bun festival that they have every year. And so this is facing the temple, but if you were to turn around, right behind you is like I don't know, like a basketball court and a playground kind of space, and that is the gathering place for this bun festival that they have every year right in front of this temple. And they have this big tower, and people are supposed to climb up and pull the buns down to give to everybody or something like that.
A tower of buns?
Yeah, it sounds really fun. Especially if you like that kind of thing. They also had a smaller little temple too that we walked by right as we got ready to leave. So took a couple pictures of that. I think just all the pretty red and gold just stands out because it's very different from what we're used to seeing here in the US. But once again, you can see the little dragons out front, and then it's like a little shrine of sorts, a place where people can go to pray or to ask this being for something unique or special. I think a lot of it had to do with things of the sea, different deities that would like help them with their fishing or just protect them while they're out on the water, because even fishing is kind of a dangerous adventure. So yeah, that's a little bit about some of the temples on that island. That was pretty interesting. I mean, I didn't really have anybody. Lydia knew a little bit, but not a ton. And I mean, you kind of almost need somebody who like understands the religion to explain all of it to you. So I'm sure there's a lot of significance to it, but it was a unique experience.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some more of our story about Wamdi in what's the title? The Girl Who Sang in the Goat House. So, We talked about last time how she got to go to the mission school. She decided maybe that missionary teacher wasn't really as scary as everybody made it sound like she was going to be. And then we ended last time wondering, well, would Wamdi decide to go back and learn more? Or maybe she'd be too scared, but she went back. She went back for days and days and weeks and months, and she learned how to read in her own language. And the first book that was written in her language was the Bible. It was translated and written out for her, so that got to be the first thing that she got to read in her language of Tengali. So she kept going to school, and she loved it. She loved to learn to read. She loved to hear the stories that Miss Frances would tell, and Miss Frances would tell lots of stories from the Bible. And Wamdi really enjoyed getting to hear all of these stories. And Miss Frances would also quote some verses from the Bible. And one of the verses that she quoted a lot was the verse John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And Miss Frances talked a lot about how God loved the people, how God loved these children that were at the school, and that he sent Jesus to come to earth to die in our place, to take the payment for our sin, the punishment for our sin. She explained that sin is anything we do that breaks God's rule, anything we do that's bad and contrary to what God would want us to do. And Wamdi knew she did bad things. She did some really bad things, and she knew that, and she began to understand that because she did bad things, something had to pay for those bad things that she did. And so she really listened, and one of the things that really caught her attention was that Miss Frances talked about how God loved her. Now, Wamdi's family had some false gods, and they would worship it, and they would try to make it happy all the time, because if they didn't make it happy, then that false god would make bad things happen, they thought. So they thought that their god would bring smallpox, diseases to make people sick. Or if something bad happened, that their god was always trying to punish them. And he was always evil, and he didn't love them. He didn't really care about them. He just wanted good things for himself or whatever. He wasn't caring about his people. So if anybody got sick, the people in her village, the Tengali people, would say, our God did it. Our God did it. And so she was used to hearing about God, but she wasn't used to hearing that God loved her. That was a way different idea. And her people didn't even realize that their God wasn't real. So Wamdi, of course, didn't love her God because her God didn't love her. He just wanted bad things to happen. But the one true God that Miss Frances kept talking about, that God did love her. And he loved her so much that he sent his son Jesus to die for her. And that Jesus rose again 3 days later to prove that he was more powerful than death. That was a pretty amazing thought. And she kept thinking about it. There's a God that loves me that much he would send his son? And Miss Frances said, Jesus died for you. And it's not because you deserve anything good. It's because he chose to love you. And he loves you even now. And he wants to hear you talk to him. And he wants to have a friendship with you. He wants to have a relationship where you can talk to him and tell him what's going on in your life, and that you want to be more like him and make better choices and try to do good things and not try to do those bad things that don't honor and please God. So one day, as Wamdi was sitting and thinking, she decided, you know what? I would like to love this God too. And so she told God, you know, God, I'm thanking you that you love me so much that you sent Jesus. And I'm trusting that Jesus is the way that one day I can go to heaven, and that I want to have a friendship with God too. And I want you to forgive me of the bad things that I've done, and I want to try to do what's right. And she finished talking to God, and she looked around, and nothing really had changed. The kids were still playing ball. There were other kids in the school playing, singing. She thought, oh, well, nothing much has changed. But in her heart, she knew something had changed. Now, she didn't want to do wrong things, bad things. She wanted to do what would make God happy. She wanted to show that she loved him by doing what was right. But one day, soon after this, Wamdi's parents asked her to do something that she knew was very, very wrong. It was against God's rules, and she knew it was sin for her to do this. So you're going to have to come back next time and see what Wamdi decides to do about what they asked her to do.
we will also have to come back to find out what it was they wanted her to do. Because
We don't know,
we
actually.
don't know. Oh, no.
It doesn't tell us in the story.
So you'll have to come back next week to find out just what she decided to do.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Okay, well, we are going to finish today by telling you about some friends of ours who are serving God in another country. And that is Tyler and Catherine Betts in France. Tyler is a childhood friend of mine, and we were roommates together at Bible college. And I worked with Catherine at camp, and Alyssa and all of us went to school together at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to, I think maybe we've talked about them one other time, and it was a while ago. So
Yeah,
we're going to
really.
give you an update on some things that are happening there. So there it is, and the last time they might have only had one kid. And so here's an updated family picture with all four of them, and we'll talk about their kids a little bit later. This is a really neat opportunity they had. So Easter this year, they were able to get together with several French families and international students, and for many of them, it was the first time they had ever celebrated Easter. And so the Bettses got to explain to them what Easter is like here, how we celebrate it, why we celebrate it. And so that was a neat opportunity for them. And then there was also a time in April when one of Tyler's friends allowed them to have a barbecue at his place with the international students. And people from their church were there, and other friends were there. They had about 40 people there for this barbecue. And so they just got to have a good time together, interacting and getting to know one another. So that was neat. Speaking of Easter, this book in French is one that Tyler has been able to go through with a couple friends. And basically, the book explains why Easter is a real thing. Why the resurrection of Christ was a real thing. And so this book proves how the resurrection happened, had to have happened, and the friends that he's going through with this have thought, you know what, it's pretty convincing. And so they're still working on that, but that was neat to hear about that. And then they have been waiting, and finally in May they were able to get their own house. So they're no
nice.
longer in someone else's building or renting or anything right now. They just have a house that they can call their own. And so they wanted to thank people for praying for that, but even more so, Tyler said this was a good lesson in patience for him. And not just this, but other things too with the church and with life and ministry. But just being able to trust God and His timing, and now they have a place that is theirs. So that's really neat. So their kids here, Liam is the oldest, and Lucy is the girl, and Liam turned 5 a few months ago, and Lucy turned 3 a few months ago. And so they said in their prayer letter, they do take after their father and are very loud and messy.
Nice.
That would be a good way to describe their dad. Now, he wasn't awful, because I was his roommate, and actually, for the most part, he was pretty clean, especially compared to a lot of other people we went to school with. But it's just funny that they describe it that way. And they are praying that God would save their kids eventually, that they would see that they need Jesus Christ as their Savior, and that they would be able to be a big part of their ministry while they're there in France. And so they are thanking God for open doors with many people, thankful for their new home and connections that they've been able to make. And their prayer request is that God would keep raising up more people to go over there and serve in France, and that they would have the boldness to speak the truth of Jesus Christ in love to other people, and that he would open doors. And Tyler told me that when we go over to France, he would see us. So hopefully,
That's cool.
in just a few days, we'll get to see him.
That would be pretty fun.
Yeah. So pray for the Betzes. It's neat to see them serving over there, and I'm looking forward to talking in person with him about the things that God has been doing there. You'll have to come back next week for the next episode to hear some more about Hong Kong and another missionary that we know. And
Some more story?
yes, that's it.
We'll see you next time.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.